Kraven the Hunter is a comic book movie about the Spider-Man villain who's the world's greatest hunter. It's brutal at times, but it's pretty sloppy overall. Let's talk about it. In this movie, we follow Sergei Kravinoff, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's an anti-hero who retreated to the wilderness at a young age, escaping his father, Nikolai Kravinoff, played by Russell Crowe. He elusively goes around killing bad people under the alias Kraven, and he protects the wilds from poachers who are all exceedingly generic villains. He eventually goes after Alexei Sitsevich, aka the Rhino, forcing him to overcome absolutely nothing in the process. Before I start dunking on this movie anymore, I just want to acknowledge the things that weren't terrible. Though the execution and the surrounding elements are often bad, this movie had some ideas that I didn't hate. I liked the idea of Kraven being this voice of the wild, this defender of the animal kingdom. It's a departure from his comic book MO, but it could work with the right script in hand. I also liked the idea of the character dynamics and the roles, specifically with the family. I liked that Nikolai wasn't the primary antagonist, but he was still an antagonist who influenced the plot. On paper, those ideas look fine, but the way that they actually approached them with the script was not amazing. So let's jump into the bad. This movie seems to have wanted to be about subverting the notion that it's a dog-eat-dog world and that in order to be strong, you have to be a predator. But as alluded to in my synopsis, this being the central focus of Kraven's character development was not handled well, and it also really doesn't make much sense for a character whose entire shtick is being a ruthless hunter. But he is ruthless, and that was depicted well for the most part. He shows no mercy in combat and no hesitation to jumping into bloody action. That said, the action scenes like to jump back and forth between him having superpowers and then the filmmakers seemingly forgetting that he has superpowers. Like, he has super strength except for when it's inconvenient, and then he's just an ordinary person who's just really good at fighting. After stepping out of the theater, I briefly heard two guys having a conversation, and one of them had said, well, the acting was bad, but the action was good. Okay, so like some of it wasn't bad, like when he's not superpowered and he's just messing dudes up with his mad skills and slapping people in the face with bear traps. But then the other half of it is garbage, mainly because the CGI and VFX are Madam Web level bad. Sometimes the mediocrity is shrouded by a fast-moving camera, or quick cuts in editing, or darkness. But when they're not as sly about masking it, you just see how awful it is. Some of those animals and shots of Kraven jumping around are laughably bad for today's standards. There's a scene where he's standing in front of a lion, and at first the lion didn't look bad, and then the lion starts moving around fast and it just looked awful. Does Sony not realize that with how many times they delayed this movie, they could have used that extra time to polish up the CGI? Because time restraints are usually the biggest reason we get bad CGI in movies. Time was not the problem here. The problem here was that they just didn't care. So you know how they dropped the first 8 minutes of the movie on YouTube for promotion? After that first scene, the movie then gives us a whole 30-minute flashback detailing how he got his powers, his relationship with his dad and his brother, and why he fled into the wild. Just to reiterate, in case you glossed over the important part there, 30 minutes. They spend 30 minutes on this flashback, completely slamming the brakes on progressing the story in present day. Sure, this gives us context to some of the things happening in present day, but they should not have spent 25% of the movie on this part when it doesn't fully set up Kraven or his pursuits. Maybe they could do that if they broke it up, with the whole slow burn flashbacks where we get seeds of them throughout the movie. That way we're not waiting around for too long wondering what had happened to the movie that we were watching. But no, they shoved it all right there at the beginning. This could have been made so much shorter if they had cut like 2 of the 3 examples that they gave us of Kraven becoming one with the wild and discovering his powers, because keeping all of them was redundant. With the intro, that long flashback, and then the following events that finally finish setting the movie up, it's not until like halfway through the movie that we actually embark, making the entire first half a much too long Act 1. But structure aside, the movie has so many issues, including things that just don't really make sense. For example, why is Kraven hunting criminals? Killing villains correlates to how much he hates his dad for some reason. The fact that he's killing other criminals by proxy and not his dad doesn't make much sense. Maybe if he was killing these people to get to his dad, that would make a little bit more sense, but he knows where to find his dad, so, he could really just show up and be like, oh, hey dad, it's been a while, just kind of wanted to come and catch up, and then... There's just a lot of lazy and sloppy writing. Characters will feel one way about each other, and then suddenly they will just feel a completely different way. At one point, somebody asks Kraven how he found them, and his response was simply, well, hunting people down is sort of my thing. After hearing this lazy piece of writing, my immediate thought was, please, please tell me that this is not the excuse that they're gonna fall back on and that he will at least give some sort of explanation, however small. Nope. There were also some narrative elements that didn't really seem to provide any value. For example, there are a couple references to KRAVEN's mother. Do not wait around expecting payoff for remembering any of the details regarding her. This movie flirts with the idea of her being more relevant, but then never really invites her in. Similarly, there were characters who didn't really provide much value, but they were included in the script because comic books. Ariana DeBose plays Calypso, who's KRAVEN's not really a love interest. I say it like that because she's depicted as his lover in the comics, but I didn't really feel anything between them here. Part of me wishes she had more to do in this movie because she felt very underutilized, especially in the third act. It kind of just felt like she was like, hey everyone, I just want everybody to know that I am in fact still in this movie. And then there's the other part of me who wishes she was just not in the movie at all, because as much as Ariana DeBose is a capable actress, she was horribly miscast here. We've also got Christopher Abbott playing a spider foe named the Foreigner. This dude absolutely did not need to be in the movie. His role was clearly an afterthought just to provide more Spider-Man fan service, because it would be far too easy to write him out of the movie entirely. And his intro scene, oh my God. This man is confronted by someone to which he responds with this incredible piece of dialogue. They call me the Foreigner because I'm not from around here. How could somebody possibly think that this was a good line? The dialogue isn't terrible all the time, but when it's bad, it's just like that. It's just dumb. They're just not second guessing anything in the screenplay. All it takes is a non-zero amount of scrutiny to polish things like that up. So they kind of run past the finish line in the end. After the story seemingly wraps, some things happen that could set up a sequel, and this ending after the ending felt pretty contrived. There's a conversation between two characters, and the stance that one of them takes felt like a very forced outcome just to justify KRAVEN having more story potential in a potential sequel. Nothing about this ending felt organic, and if a sequel doesn't happen, it's just going to look dumb, just like the rest of Sony's empty teases of what might come in future projects. But it's looking like this might be the last of the Sony Spider-Villain origin movies, and if so, they are ending on just as bad a whimper as they started, because it's just bad. The occasional cool action sequences are not enough to carry this poorly crafted movie. But you know, all things considered, it was pretty good. Just kidding, it was very disappointing. Save your money, save yourself the headache too, and just go see something this weekend that doesn't suck. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you next week with my review of Sonic the Hedgehog 3.